dark day in Texas after the state enacted the strictest anti-abortion law in the country. Senate Bill 8, which went into effect on the 1st of September, effectively bans abortions after 6 weeks into pregnancy. Most people who can give birth don't know they're pregnant within that 6 weeks. One harrowing feature of the bill is that it more or less deputizes private citizens to be vigilante enforcers of the law, enabling them to sue anyone they believe to have aided or abetted someone getting an abortion after 6 weeks. That could be the healthcare provider or even the person who drives the patient to the clinic. The law does provide exemptions to the 6-week cutoff for cases of medical emergency, broadly defined, but it explicitly does not include exemptions for patients who were impregnated through rape or incest. On Wednesday night, just before midnight, the U.S. Supreme Court declined to block the law based on an emergency application for a writ of injunction filed by abortion rights groups. The implementation of SB 8 in Texas was a victory for conservatives who have long sought to eliminate abortion access in the United States. Here's Texas Governor Greg Abbott.
Our Creator endowed us with the right to life, and yet millions of children lose their right to life every year because of abortion. In Texas, we work to save those lives.
The law amounts to a near total ban on abortion procedures, given that 85 to 90% of abortions occur after 6 weeks into someone's pregnancy, and would likely force many clinics to close, abortion rights groups have said.
I mean, look, we are incredibly disappointed. Essentially what happened in Texas is that they turned the clock back 50 years. It is an incredibly dark day, and in not responding in this moment, the Supreme Court has effectively overruled Roe v. Wade for women in Texas.
As I mentioned before, the law in Texas sets up what critics have called a vigilante system in which any Texas resident can sue an abortion provider or anyone suspected of aiding and abetting someone seeking an abortion after the 6-week cutoff. If they win in court, they could get a bounty of at least $10,000, which would come out of the pockets of the defendants. The mere threat of litigation has prompted abortion clinics in Texas to immediately limit their abortion services in compliance with the law. Here's Florida State University law professor Mary Ziegler.
So the reason Texas has done this, I think there are really two reasons. One, lawsuits of this kind could effectively bankrupt abortion providers, so they may stop performing abortions, whether there are criminal consequences or not. And more importantly, designing the law in this way protects Texas officials from potential lawsuits.
To break down this latest assault on abortion rights, I'm joined by the brilliant writer and longtime Real News contributor, Molly Shah. Molly, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's still a lot to process here. And we are going to be doing more extended coverage here at the Real News on the implementation of the Texas abortion ban, as well as the oncoming assaults on abortion rights launched by the political right wing in this country. But I wanted to ask Molly if we could start by placing Senate Bill 8 in Texas in context of the larger right wing assault on abortion rights, which is something that I know that you have investigated and covered a lot in your past work.
Sure. I mean, it's just sort of like a culmination of basically little chisels on Roe that have been done since the 90s. And even before that, I think what's important whenever you talk about Roe is to talk about how Roe was never for everyone. Roe is sort of a baseline. It never gave abortion rights to everyone, and people who are marginalized always have had more difficulty getting abortions in America. And for various reasons, mainly cost, but other reasons as well. So when you look at since the 90s, there have been this series of laws that have sort of chiseled things away. There's waiting periods, there's various like hospital requirements. I'm from Kentucky, and that's one of the big ones that happened there, is that you had to be registered with the hospital, even though it doesn't really make any sense. And just other requirements that have just basically chiseled away at Roe for decades. And this Texas bill is sort of novel because it's not really a criminal bill. It actually just is it sort of makes it everyone in Texas can sue if someone helps provide an abortion, which is sort of a novel take. I don't think anyone's ever tried this before. And I think that a lot of reproductive rights people were really looking at this Dobbs case out of Mississippi, and the Fifth Circuit allowed the case to go forward, and the Supreme Court just didn't let it go, didn't do anything. So they officially overturned Roe versus Wade in Texas because 6 weeks is pre-viability.
Right. And, I think that, you make a really important point, right? That even though, this is kind of front and center in the news right now, the story really is that the assault on abortion rights has been ongoing for many decades. And it has been an exceedingly motivating factor for the political right, particularly its evangelical base. And that's true in Texas as well. I think it was even in 2013 that Texas essentially lost half of its abortion providing clinics due to those additional kind of restrictions that were put on hospitals, as you mentioned. And I guess just to kind of flesh out something that you mentioned for viewers that's really important, right, is that there was always a difference between, having the right to an abortion in principle and having the right in practice, right? And that was something that very much limited poor and working people's abilities to attain an abortion, especially if they have to travel a long way, they have to miss work, they have to check in and wait 24 hours, before so, I mean, a lot of people don't have the means to do that, right? And so, there are many ways that states, including Texas, have effectively negated people's right to attain a safe abortion, even without kind of taking the draconian steps that Texas has taken this week. I wanted to actually drill down on that a little bit for viewers. We talked a bit about this at the beginning, what in Texas does, and why, in fact, it is so extreme.
Well, it's a 6-week ban, which is incredibly early. Most people don't know they're pregnant before 6 weeks. In fact, people who get IVF to get pregnant, so they're actively looking to see if they're pregnant, typically don't find out till 4.75 weeks. So it's just very, very early in the pregnancy period for an unexpected pregnancy in particular. Also, it's bizarre, and it's really a vague and broad law, and it's pretty on its face unconstitutional based on that, because it says anyone who basically helps find an abortion provider. So, I mean, in theory, you're talking like an Uber driver who takes you to your abortion clinic because it doesn't require intent, could theoretically be sued by anyone in the state of Texas, because everyone can sue, could theoretically be sued for helping provide an abortion in Texas after 6 weeks. So it's just really broad. I know that even some of the people I've been talking to have been worried about promoting abortion funds, because is that helping provide an abortion? And just what the law means is really unclear. And I think everybody is sort of working from a worst case scenario type of place, because it's just bad. And it's really irresponsible what the Supreme Court did, because there's no hearing on this. So there's no way to flesh out any of these intricacies of what happened. And, you've got Roberts even joining with the liberal majority saying that, we don't usually do it this way because we look at where, we have an institutional history, and we need to look at the actual law, and we don't usually overturn laws without hearing them first. We usually grant stays, basically, and they did not do that. So it's not only just draconian in the way that it's written, which a lot of these bills are draconian in the way that's written. It's also very draconian in what the Supreme Court is doing, which is leaving people basically hanging on a law that I don't think the Texas legislature ever actually thought would be enforced. So it's not written particularly well.
Well, and I know that, that's going to mean, future legal challenges to this law. But for the time being, right now, the law as written has been implemented in Texas, effectively, as we said, banning abortions after 6 weeks, which is just another way of saying of effectively banning abortions writ large. And so, as I mentioned, we're going to keep bringing you coverage on this as things develop. But I guess, by way of rounding out, Molly, thinking about those legal challenges and how they're going to play out, I was wondering if you had kind of any thoughts on where the sort of pushback from this is going to come, right? I mean, the laws that we've been talking about in Texas and in states like Alabama, you mentioned the Supreme Court hearing case in a case based in Mississippi that's coming up. There's a lot happening on the legal front, and there's a lot of organization and mobilization from right-wing anti-abortion groups that have led to these sorts of laws being put into practice. So I wanted to ask, where folks should be looking for the resistance to this. Is it on the ground? Is it in the courtroom? Is it in the legislature? I guess, what are people doing? Where do you think we should be looking?
The first thing I would say is right now what we have is an abortion funding crisis, because all of these people in Texas and theoretically also in Mississippi and Louisiana who are also in the Fifth Circuit may be in a position very quickly to have to get out-of-state abortions and to fund out-of-state abortions. It's not quite that dire. There are online resources they can use, and there are other things they can do to get abortions in Texas now. But funding abortions and looking for abortion funding places, not like these big advocacy organizations, is where I would donate money right now, is towards funding abortions. And there's a national abortion foundation that you can look up and find the one in your area. And so not just donate to Texas, donate to your area, because you're talking about people coming in from out of state. But as far as pushing back against it, I mean, the Democrats have control of the Senate and the House right now. They could pass a bill that guarantees abortion. They could. It takes political will. It takes probably almost for sure overcoming a filibuster in the Senate and being brave to do that. They can also stack the courts, something that they have the ability to do and makes sense to do considering how out of whack the courts are with what the American people vote for every year. I always think that where the real impetus from this needs to come from is always the people. We consent to be governed, and we don't have to consent to be governed like this. I think that organizing on a mass mobility scale against this, and not just in ways that are like call your legislature, is always valuable.
So that is the brilliant writer and longtime Real News contributor, Molly Shah. We'll be checking in with Molly as these things develop. Molly, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your thoughts with us.
Thanks for having me.
For the Real News Network, this is Maximillian Alvarez, editor-in-chief. Before you go, please go to therealnews.com/support and become a sustainer of our work, and stay tuned for more coverage on the assault on abortion rights in the United States, and stay safe out there. Thanks for watching.